This podcast is brought to you by Deepbridge Capital LLP. Deepbridge is authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Please note that investments discussed are both illiquid and high risk and won't be suitable for all investors and should be considered as part of a diversified portfolio. The content of this podcast should not be construed as financial or taxation advice. We recommend investors seek appropriate professional financial advice. Any views expressed may no longer be current and may have already been acted upon. Welcome to this latest Deepbridge Discovery Podcast. The purpose of this podcast is to bring to life the people at Deepbridge and the people that we work with. So today I'm delighted to go on a slightly different tangent, and we'll be talking to Richard Nuttall of Oak Compliance Consultancy, who is a compliance expert working with financial advisors across the UK. So Ricky, great to have you. Great to speak to you.
It's very kind of you to invite me.
No, good.
Andrew.
So can you tell us, for our audience who don't necessarily know you, can you tell us a bit about your background and what it is you do?
Yeah, well, I mean, for over 30 years now, I've been in financial services. For the main part of that, I've been heading up a help desk, compliance help desk at what was then the largest compliance consultancy within the UK. Subsequent to that, I moved companies which became the largest provider of support services within the UK. It's just a common link, it's nothing personal there. And the role I finished there on was head of compliance policy. So, 30 years working with IFA firms, helping in all aspects of compliance, and I felt that was a good grounding. To look to do something new, something exciting, and something where I can provide a little bit more personalised support and guidance to firms that want to work for themselves.
Absolutely, and I think probably now more than ever, IFAs need more compliance support than they probably ever had.
Yeah, I think I'd certainly agree with that. Definitely, yeah.
You must have seen some changes over the past 30 years. It's an ever-changing field.
I mean, listen, we haven't got time to go into it all, but some absolutely massive changes and changes which everyone thinks is going to bring a grinding halt to the advice industry, but every time it just flourishes, and I think that's the most wonderful accolade that I can give to advice firms. No,
absolutely. We saw that 10 years ago with RDO, and I'm sure we'll see that again with consumer duty and everything now as people rise to the challenge. But so kind of talking about today and where we are currently, obviously, again, major regulatory changes. We're in the middle of the kind of phased introduction of consumer duty rules. What are kind of general principles of consumer duty, and what does that mean for advisors and I guess for clients as well?
Well, consumer duty. And you always pause after saying it because I think everyone just gives a big sigh every time that you mention it. But I mean, what is a consumer duty? Well, I mean, I've looked at this and I've read an awful lot about it. There's huge amounts of regulatory material and information about it. It doesn't precisely say what it is firms have to do. But I think for advice firms, it's essentially what firms should be doing already. It's about doing the right thing. But I think with a consumer duty, that's more of a firms collectively. It's everyone within that regulated landscape. And I think a large part of the consumer duty will be achieved if only consumers can actually take advice. And we know there's not enough capacity within the market. But let's be clear. No firm can be complacent with this. So you asked about what the principles of the consumer duty are. And listen, I can regurgitate from those papers and give you those four principles. But I'm not going to do that because I think everyone's absolutely sick to death of hearing it. They want to know what it is as a firm they have to do. And again, we haven't got time to cover everything here. But I think some of the key principles behind this are about being clear on the services the firm is actually offering to the client. And that's about good disclosure. It's confirming that the services that are being provided, the breadth of those services and the cost as well. It's about understanding the needs of the clients. And we, a lot of the time, we do that through gathering information, through these fact-find documents and the like. But it's also as well about challenging the clients and their assumptions that they have about what it is they want and they need and about the financial markets as well. It's about understanding which products are going to be right for the client. But I think equally as well, it's about understanding what products aren't right.
Yep.
And making recommendations. I think we need to be clear, use simple language, in all communications, but especially those those reports that we send out. And I think what's so important is to be clear and have prominent reference to the disclosure of the risks and disadvantages, rather than kind of hiding it away and using standard text. I think
no such thing as small print anymore, then, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you really see small print in reports. I think those days are gone. You still see it in a lot of maybe the larger institutions when they have consumer publications, and I certainly hope that the duty itself drives those firms away from doing that. But that's not to say that information still can't be hidden towards the back or in a less predominant way. So I think it's so important to bring that out. And I think in doing that, what the responsibility for firms then to do is actually check the client understands the advice that they've got. They understand the product. They understand the risk that they're taking on and what the disadvantages can be. And I think it's so important to really have a good conversation about it. And then for most firms, they are going to provide an ongoing service. And again, it's about ensuring that the service is clear, the costs are clear, but also as well, it's actually delivered to meet the expectations of the client.
Yeah, I think that's, and I think your point you made kind of early on there about understanding what the client wants and what they could potentially get, because I guess it's you do see examples where clients come along and say, I want to do this and I want to do that, when actually that might not be what's right for them. So I guess the advisor's got to be able to challenge, and it's not always that the customer's always right. It's kind of turned that on its head to some degree.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly the point. Yeah. Exactly the point.
So obviously, obviously I'm biased. I'm working for Deepbridge. These, everyone who's going to be listening or watching this will understand what we do in the tax efficient space. But if advisors are considering the use of likes of BR or business relief or EIS products, what would this mean specifically for them, consumer duty wise? Does this mean that actually they should be at least stating why they discounted certain products, or will this bring kind of the consideration of such products to prominence, or will it be some other kind of outcome that potentially comes for advisors?
Yeah, I think we had elements of this under the RDR and this, retail investment products. Yep. What constitutes a retail investment product? Some firms just automatically discounted products. Is that right? Well, listen, you could argue this as a day's long, to be honest with you. What I would probably say is, and it goes back to some of those principles I was talking about before, what is it, the actual service the firm is actually providing here? Yep. Is it a full holistic service which considers the client's individual needs each and every time? Yep. Or is it something which is a little bit more restricted? Yep. Is it maybe something whereby the firm's saying, look, we don't believe these products are going to be right for our clients, and therefore we're just going to discount them and not talk about them? And again, I'm not saying, you'd have to, either way is right or wrong, but it's about the disclosure. Yep. It's about the clients understanding the service they're going to get and what products may or may not be considered as part of that. But look, if someone's going to be fully holistic and that's how they communicate that service to the client, then everything, every one of those retail investment products, will have to have some due consideration. That includes the BPR and the VCT and the EIS, et cetera. I'm not going to say it's suitable for everyone, but it has to be consideration.
But I guess, therefore, the advisors probably need to understand those products in order to be able to discount them, or at a company-wide level, I guess, that they need to understand them.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's and this is the key thing, isn't it? The understanding of the products, when they're going to be suitable for their clients, and ultimately which particular client can actually take on the risks and some of the disadvantages associated with them.
So going to the world of the tax efficient investment space, EIS, VCTs, etc. There will be advisors out there who are less au fait with these products because they've never really thought about them before, or never kind of thought they had to consider them before, or it's never been on the radar. What would be your key recommendations for those advisors that are probably less familiar with the space?
Yeah, do you know what? I mean, this is the most important thing, and it goes back to understanding what products are right and which products aren't right for the client. And you can only make that assessment once you're fully understanding of those particular products, and you carry out a form of due diligence on them. And I suppose when we think about this product area, in my mind, it falls within two areas.
Okay.
One is tax planning.
Yep.
I think as part of tax planning, some of the benefits you can get from these solutions are actually wonderful outcomes for clients. Again, where the client's prepared to take some of those risks and have a good understanding.
Absolutely, understanding the risk is critical. Absolutely.
Yeah, of financial products. But something more recently, I'm not an investment advisor. I don't really understand the investment markets.
Yep.
And it's not my area, but it does get you thinking. And I was mentioning earlier how long I've been in the industry for.
Yep.
When I first started back in the industry, Andrew, diversification was two with-profit plans. That's how you diversify portfolio.
Yep. And
then we had the crash back in 2007. 08. And diversification sprung up again because a lot of single fund strategies were being used, most notably things like commercial property. And when we had the downturn, it had a huge effect.
Wiped out that market, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's when the FCA started having these publications advertising things like "Don't keep all your eggs in the same basket," and et cetera, et cetera. But more recently, from what I see, no matter how diversified a portfolio is, it seems to be going up or it seems to be going down, and there doesn't seem to be investments or solutions in there, which create that correlation. And I have been hearing an awful lot more in more recent times about things like venture capital and the benefits that can give. So it'll be interesting to see, I think, over the course of the next 12 months more, what conversations there are within the market about creating further diversification with a diversified portfolio by the use of some of these investments and some of these solutions.
It was interesting on that point, Ricky, because back in 2021, Dr. Brian Moretta at Harbin & Co. did a white paper looking at that very subject and looking at how individuals could introduce venture capital into their portfolio, excuse me, without increasing the overall risk of the portfolio. So maybe having some more bonds in there, etc., to offset the high risk of venture capital. But by introducing that, they could significantly improve returns over the long term without changing their overall portfolio risk. And I guess it's understanding the individual risks within that, but as a whole, as a portfolio, you don't necessarily need to change that. So there's a lot of work going on out there on that exact point of actually how can you introduce venture capital without, in order to create improved returns, but without potentially increasing the overall portfolio risk. So there's lots of research going on, which is very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've not come across that, and I've not read it, and I don't think I want to read it. But it is interesting about these different theories out there, and even the regulator at the minute in time are looking at different ways to diversify and look at some of these long-term asset funds, where people are locked in for a lot longer, in the hope they are creating greater diversification. And at the same time, doing some good, not just for the economy, but for the environment and the like as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess it all comes back to the client appetite and client outcomes again. What are you trying to achieve? What does the client want from it? And how do you reach that? So If you had an advisor looking at this space, the tax efficient space, what would you be expecting to see them do, or evidence, or how? Yeah, what would you be expecting to see if you're helping them with their compliance side of things? What do they need to be doing to make sure they're doing this in a regulated, compliant manner?
I think first of all, I'll take a step back.
Okay.
From what you said there. I think you said there, if you're looking at this, I think the first thing is, what is it that a firm is actually doing?
Yep.
Is this something they're engaging in, or is this something that is turned around and said, look, I'm not getting involved in this particular
Makes sense.
Now listen, they're not getting involved. Listen, that's not a problem. We'll just be clear to the client that, there are certain things as a firm we don't get involved in, we won't consider.
Yep.
When a firm, is considering this, listen, it's not going to be a large part of what they do. I think we're both understanding of that. But in the right interest, in the right instances, it's important to be able to identify and say to that client, look, I think this could be a good product, a good outcome for your particular situation. And I suppose at that point in time, you'd expect a firm to have gone through some basic CPD, some basic educational programs. I think if a firm's actually getting then involved in this, and they've not really been active in the market before, you will probably want to do something a little bit more in depth.
Yep.
I probably expect them to work with a professional provider, maybe someone like yourselves, or another example of that in the market, to really have a good understanding of the practical way in which these sorts of products actually work, and what clients can expect to see. Because look, anyone can read the risk warnings, and every single risk warning is exactly the same for every single product, and they almost become meaningless and don't have much value. And it's really that conversation with the advisor, through the assistance of firms like yourself and others as well, which will really help with that. But do you know what? I'm not trying to force everyone down this particular route. There may be instances whereby it could be identified as a good thing for a client, but a firm just doesn't want to engage. And maybe that time, look at a referral system. We see lots of different examples of firms outsourcing different aspects of the advice. But I think what's important is, in just what I said there, it's outsourcing the advice. Don't outsource it to someone who's just going to write a product. Make sure that client is going for advice in terms of that, or a range of different solutions that may be suitable.
Again, it's exploring what the client wants and what's right. Because again, even within the world of tax efficient investments, whether it be EIS versus VCTs versus business property relief, etc., there's various different types of products. There's different things that different managers are trying to do. There's different types of products, even within the EIS market, even the VCT market. So that advice piece is particularly key. It can't just I guess that kind of means you've got to have some diversification, I guess, within that kind of area as well. It shouldn't just be going to one provider or etc. Or it shouldn't just be a carte blanche decision, I guess.
Yeah, of course, you've got to create diversification in your kind of diversified areas. I think this is probably one of the biggest challenges for firms where they're new to this space. Is where do you go? Where do you go to find out the due diligence? Where do you go to find out the research into some of these companies and what might be the right thing? And I certainly believe that spreading the risk, within this particular is of utmost importance.
And I think also, I think you talked about kind of education and what have you. And I think when you had a former hat on, we were talking recently that I think some of the best education that we've been involved in this market is when you've had in that instance your voice as a compliance voice alongside the product providers. So actually us as product providers can actually explain the benefits and what's going on with these products and how they work, etc. But again, then the likes of yourself can actually explain how an advisor uses them appropriately, how it fits into their advice model and things like that. And I think that's been very powerful to advisors over the years. If you listen to the advisors, you hear some absolutely fantastic stories, and quite rightly so. But I think when you get back to the office and look at this through that compliance lens, it feels a little bit different. Absolutely.
it feels like, how are we gonna get this through? What do we need to say? And there's an area of concern about the PI, and then so there's a lot of negativity that comes from the regulatory side, which sometimes can dampen down what could potentially be the right thing to do. And I think that's why a lot of firms do turn around and say, well, I'm just not going to get involved in this. And it might not be that they don't think the product is right per se. Sometimes they're thinking it's the compliance that we don't want to take on. We just don't understand it. We're just nervous about it. Let's protect the business from that angle.
Absolutely.
As opposed to the client's best interest angle.
When we speak to advisors or firms that don't offer tax efficient investments, kind of carte blanche, if you like, there's kind of generally three pushbacks. One is kind of fairly loosely saying, we just don't have the right clients, which may be the case, or may just be an excuse, or maybe they've not looked to see how these fit in. Second one is, compliance would just be a nightmare, and I don't want to go down that route, and it's you big scary people in compliance that's putting them off. And the third one is, as you alluded to, is the professional indemnity. Well, I don't want to actually take on any extra liability, etc. So I guess if you're making sure you're getting the compliance bit right, then I guess the professional indemnity bit kind of falls in fairly neatly with that, because that should take some of the risk mitigation as far as the insurers are away. So it's important making sure they've got that compliance steps right. I guess that's key to them.
Yeah, you're right. Listen, let's be clear. The PI market has not been a great place over recent times, and we're not going into the reasons for it, but one of the key aspects is to do with things like British Steel, and it's made a lot of firms nervous, and you take a concerned look at everything. It just makes it a hardened market. But have a good process in place. Make sure you're delivering on those principles that I spoke about before. Share that with the PI insurers. Let them understand what it is that you do. Show them the due diligence. Show them the education that you're doing. Show them the research that you're carrying out. I think if you engage in that way, it will certainly put the insurer's mind at ease. And I think it would work very well in looking to insure yourself, not just in this particular area, but in other areas as well. Yeah,
and look, it shouldn't just be a computer says no situation. It should be a dialogue and being able to witness and represent what you're doing. Okay, I think we've covered a lot of ground there, Ricky. I think there's loads of stuff there. I think the key takeaway that I think certainly advisors should be taking is that this isn't an area of advice that should be scary, and actually should fit in with if you are having to look at consumer outcomes and decide what's right for clients. And there will be scenarios within there where such products are right, and it's just about making sure, as you've alluded to there, you've got the documented process. You're actually doing things in a proactive manner, and you can show exactly how you're doing things, and that'll hopefully keep the compliance ogres off your back, as well as the indemnity insurance providers. But
yeah,
because nobody wants you harassing them, Ricky. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So with these podcasts as well, we do try and bring some personality to these podcasts as well, because we do want people to know the people that we're working with and speaking with. So outside of the world of compliance, Ricky, what do you get up to?
Well, personality, that's where I'm going to struggle. What do I get up to? Well, I like. Do you know what I do like? I do like having a game of golf. Nice. And I do like it with the sun on my back.
Yep.
And I do like it with a couple of cold ones in the buggy. I also like watching my local team, which is Stockport County, who are doing reasonably well at the moment in time. Very optimistic for this season, especially if I can get a couple of cold ones before the match as well. And there starts to be a bit of a theme about this, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you know what my third favourite pastime is. I don't think I need to tell you.
No, and I've enjoyed some cold ones with you over the years as well, Ricky. So that's always appreciated. The question that we ask all of our guests on the Deepbridge Discovery Podcast, though, is about the Deepbridge dinner party, and we ask everyone to invite 3 guests to the dinner party, dead or alive, no friends or family, so we don't annoy anybody for being missed off the list. But who would you be your 3 guests, and why?
Oh, do you know something? What a horrible question! What a question! This is the worst
Absolutely.
one.
That's what everyone tells me. That's why we enjoy this question so much.
Let me. Do you know what? It probably changed depending on the mood. I'm in at the time. Right now, I would say Jonathan Ross. I just think he's met so many people. He's got so many stories, and he's just such good fun.
If not only just about his own parties that are supposedly legendary.
Well, yeah, that's right. Yeah, which don't mimic the Deepbridge parties.
Of course,
I would hasten to add.
Absolutely.
And I would probably want to see, maybe a few years younger than what he is now, Clint Eastwood. What an actor! Yeah. Wow, what a presence on screen. If you can't be in awe of a person like that, I can't believe you'd be in awe of anyone.
But I guess he also, lived through the golden generation of Hollywood. He was there, back in the in 50s, 60s, and 30s.
Done it all.
Yeah.
Even now.
Yeah.
And then, growing up, I'm going to have to say Eric Morecambe.
Okay.
I mean, the guy just had me in stitches without even saying anything. Yep. What a comedy legend. I mean, just to be able to have his company over a few drinks for an hour or two, you'd be in absolute heaven. As if those dinners aren't heaven anyway.
Absolutely. You could ask him to play the piano as well, but just not necessarily all in the right order. Yeah.
That's right.
Good. No, excellent. Well, Ricky, thank you very much for your time. I think we've covered a lot of ground there, lots of very interesting stuff. Really appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll get you back on the podcast in the future. But very interesting. So thank you very much for your time.
No, thanks for inviting me. Really appreciate it.
Cheers, Ricky.
Take care.
Thank you for joining us. If you have any topics you'd like discussing in future podcasts, then please email us at discovery@deepbridgecapital.com. This podcast was brought to you by Deepbridge Capital LLP. Deepbridge is authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Please note that investments discussed are both illiquid and high risk and won't be suitable for all investors and should be considered as part of a diversified portfolio. The content of this podcast should not be construed as financial or taxation advice. We recommend investors seek appropriate professional financial advice. Any views expressed may no longer be current and may have already been acted upon.